Hey guys, how's it going? Hope you're doing well. My name is Crown, and today I'm going to read you some very interesting stories that I hope that you're gonna love. And now, without further ado, let's go!
My family has always had strong opinions about who I date, and it started when I was 16. I brought my first boyfriend home for dinner, and he barely made it through the appetizers before the interrogation began. My dad started asking about his career plans even though we were both still in high school. My uncle jumped in asking why his jeans had holes in them. My aunt questioned whether his parents taught him proper manners because he used the wrong fork for his salad. By dessert, my boyfriend looked like he wanted to disappear. We broke up 2 weeks later. He told me my family scared him more than any horror movie ever could. The pattern continued through my late teens and early 20s. Every guy I dated got the same treatment. They'd walk through the door and suddenly 8 pairs of eyes would lock onto them like sharks spotting blood in the water. The questions came rapid fire, one after another, barely giving the poor guy time to breathe. They'd demand to know what college he was attending and what his major was. They'd ask where he worked and how much he made. They'd question his clothing choices and suggest different haircuts. They'd want to know if he worked out, what his plans for the future were, when he'd buy a house, and whether he wanted kids. It didn't matter if I'd been dating someone for 3 weeks or 3 months. The interrogation was always the same, always brutal, and always ended with my relationship falling apart shortly after. Some guys ghosted me right away. Others stuck around for a bit trying to prove themselves worthy, but eventually gave up when they realized my family would never approve. By the time I turned 22, I developed a new strategy. When things got serious with someone who I knew wouldn't meet my family's impossible standards, I'd sit him down and explain the situation. I'd tell him that my family was toxic about my relationships, that they'd never accept him, and that for everyone's sanity it would be better if they never knew he existed. I promised we could still have a real relationship, just one that existed outside my family's awareness. This approach worked slightly better than the alternative, but it still caused problems. Guys didn't like feeling like a secret. They didn't appreciate being hidden away like something shameful. The relationships usually lasted a bit longer this way, but they still ended with the same result. Me alone, and my family smug in their belief that I just hadn't found the right person yet. Then I met this guy about 4 months ago. He was different from my usual type, which probably should have been my first clue that my family would hate him. He had tattoos, worked as a bartender while pursuing his music career, and dressed in a style my family would definitely call questionable. But he made me laugh, treated me well, and we had genuine chemistry. I knew better than to introduce him to my family. I knew better than to even mention his existence. But I made one crucial, idiotic mistake. 2 months into seeing him, I posted a photo of us together on my social media story. It was just a quick shot of us at a concert, nothing too serious. I forgot that my cousin follows me, and she has the biggest mouth in the entire family. The next evening, I showed up for our regular Sunday dinner, hoping to eat quickly and leave. The second I sat down at the table, my mom gave me this look. That look. The one that meant I was in trouble. She asked who the new guy was, her voice dripping with suspicion. I looked around the table and counted 8 people. My parents, 2 aunts, 1 uncle, my grandmother, and 2 cousins. I tried playing dumb, asking what guy she meant. My first aunt told me not to act stupid with them. She said my cousin had shown them the picture. My uncle chimed in saying the guy looked like he'd just rolled out of bed and asking what was wrong with his hair. My dad wanted to know if he had a real job. Here we go again. I felt that familiar anger building in my chest. The same anger I'd felt dozens of times before during these family inquisitions about my love life. I watched my aunt pour herself another glass of wine, settling in for what she clearly expected to be a long, enjoyable evening of tearing apart my choices. My second aunt asked why I was going out with one of those types again. She said I knew better than this. Something in me just snapped. Maybe it was years of pent-up frustration. Maybe it was the condescending tone in her voice. Maybe it was the way everyone at the table looked so satisfied with themselves, so certain they had the right to judge my relationship. I looked around the table one more time. I noticed my uncle's car keys sitting next to his plate, right beside his third beer. I noticed my aunt's flushed cheeks from the wine. I noticed how comfortable everyone looked, how settled in they were for a long evening of making me miserable. And then the words just came out of my mouth before I could stop them. I told them, with the sweetest smile I could manage, that his dick was huge. I took a sip of my water and waited. The silence that followed was absolutely beautiful. My grandmother's fork clattered against her plate. My dad's face turned red. My mom's mouth hung open like a fish gasping for air. My uncle started choking on his beer. My first aunt grabbed her phone right away and started ordering a rideshare. My other aunt downed her entire glass of wine in 3 gulps and did the same. My cousins stared at their plates like they were the most fascinating things they'd ever seen. My grandmother clutched her pearls. She literally clutched her actual pearl necklace. The silence stretched on for what felt like forever, but was probably only 30 seconds. Nobody moved. Nobody spoke. Nobody even seemed to breathe. Then my uncle stood up quickly and said something about remembering an early morning meeting before practically running to the door. My aunts followed close behind, both of them on their phones, calling cabs, suddenly very concerned about getting home safely. My cousins made excuses about homework. Within 10 minutes, half the table had cleared out. I finished my dinner in peace while my parents sat there in shocked silence. That was 2 months ago. The family group chat exploded for about a week afterward. My parents threatened to kick me out of the house. They tried to ground me, despite the fact that I'm an adult with my own job and car. My grandmother sent me a long text about propriety and shame. But you know what? Nobody has asked me about who I'm dating since then. Nobody interrogates my boyfriends anymore. In fact, nobody mentions my love life at all. Totally worth it. I grew up in a pretty normal family where recipes meant the back of the pasta box and whatever seasoning packet came with the taco kit. When I married into this family 3 years ago, I had no idea what I was walking into. They treated their pasta recipe like it was some kind of ancient relic. At the wedding, right after we cut the cake, my mother-in-law pulled me aside with this leather-bound book. She gave me this whole speech about how I was now part of the family, and that meant I got access to the secret red sauce and pasta recipe. She went on and on about how this recipe had been passed down for generations, how it was what kept the family connected, how every holiday meal centered around it. My spouse just shrugged when I asked about it later that night. They said their mom takes this stuff way too seriously, but I should just go with it. The recipe itself was pretty good, I'll admit that. And there was something kinda nice about how we all took turns making it for family gatherings, each person adding their own little twist while keeping the base the same. That's how I got close to my spouse's cousin. She's this amazing woman in her early 50s, never married, completely content with her life. She travels, she volunteers, she's got this great career. When I first joined the family, she was the one who helped me navigate all the unspoken rules and dynamics. We started hanging out outside of family events. She taught me how to cook, how to stand up for myself when the in-laws got too pushy, how to find good wine on a budget. She became more than family. She became my friend. One day last spring, we were having coffee at her place, and I asked when it would be her turn to host and make the family recipe. I'd had everyone else's version by then, and she was by far the best cook in the family. Her food was incredible. She got quiet for a second, then laughed it off. She explained that she never got the recipe. I didn't understand at first. She was born into this family. She'd been around longer than half the people who had it. She told me they only give it to married family members. My spouse didn't even get a copy until our wedding day. I said that was ridiculous since she was literally blood related to them. She said she'd asked for it a few times over the years, and they always gave her the same answer. When she gets married, then she'll get it. I pointed out that she doesn't want to get married. She agreed and said she never has, and that she's perfectly happy with her life the way it is. The whole thing bothered me more than I let on. Here was this woman who'd been part of the family for over 50 years, who was an amazing cook, who cared about family traditions, and she was locked out of this recipe because of some arbitrary rule about marriage. Meanwhile, I'd been around for 3 years and got handed the recipe like it was nothing. In November, she asked if I was planning to make my usual big batch in December. I always made extra for people to take home. She wanted to know if she could trade me some portions for this special dessert she makes every year. I told her, of course, but then I had a better idea. I asked why I didn't just give her the recipe instead. She seemed shocked and asked what I meant. I explained that I wanted to give her the recipe. She was born into this family and shouldn't have to trade for leftovers of her own family's food. That was insane. She asked if I was sure because my mother-in-law was going to lose her mind. I told her to let her and that she deserved to have it. I sent her a photo of the recipe that night. She texted me back about 20 minutes later with a string of heart emojis and a thank you message that was longer than most emails I've written. 2 weeks later, she made it for the first time. She was so excited that she had some family members over to try it. That's when everything hit the fan. Someone opened her fridge and saw the leftovers, recognized the dish, and asked how she made it. She was too happy to lie about it. My mother-in-law called me the next day. She didn't even say hello. She jumped right into asking how I could give her the recipe when she didn't earn it. I said she was born into the family and earned it more than I have. My mother-in-law snapped back. That's not how this works. The recipe is for married family members. It's tradition. I said it's a gatekeeping tradition that makes no sense. She told me I had no right and hung up on me. Then the texts started coming in from the aunts. They all said basically the same thing. How I disrespected the family, how I'd broken tradition, how I clearly didn't understand how things worked. The cousin's married sister sent me a novel of a text about how her sister had to follow the rules like everyone else, how I was playing favorites, how I was causing problems in the family. My father-in-law at least tried to see my side. He called me a few days before Thanksgiving. He said he got why I did it and that he really did understand, but it wasn't my place to make that call. I told him someone had to because they all were never going to give it to her. He admitted that was probably true but said, I put myself in the middle of something now. Thanksgiving was brutal. My mother-in-law barely looked at me. The aunts made snide comments every chance they got. One of them made a big show of talking about how important it was to respect family traditions and honor the way things had always been done. My spouse stayed out of it completely. They told me privately that they thought the whole thing was stupid either way, that it was just a recipe and people needed to calm down. The cousin showed up with a dish she'd made using the recipe. She'd put her own twist on it, added some spices, used a different type of pasta. It was amazing. Better than half the versions I'd tried. My mother-in-law wouldn't even try it. But here's the thing that made the whole mess worth it. Near the end of the night, the cousin pulled me aside in the kitchen. She thanked me and said I had no idea what this meant to her. I told her she didn't have to thank me. She insisted that she did. She explained that she'd been part of this family her whole life and had always been treated like she wasn't quite complete because she's not married. I was the first person who'd ever said that was wrong. The cold shoulder lasted through Christmas, while the cousin and I hosted our own dinner in January. We made the recipe together, shared it with friends, people who wanted to be there. Family isn't about following pointless rules. It's about choosing the people who see you for who you are. I've been planning my daughter's 10th birthday party for months. She's been taking horseback riding lessons for 2 years now, and all she wanted was to show her friends what she could do. So I hired a professional trainer who brings horses to private events. The guy came highly recommended, had all the proper insurance and certifications. His horse was this beautiful chestnut mare named Bella, calm as anything, perfect for a kid's party. We set everything up in our backyard. Had about 15 kids there, some parents hanging around the edges. The trainer arrived early, got Bella settled in, walked my daughter through the routine one more time. She was so excited, she could barely stand still. The plan was simple. My daughter would do a short demonstration, some basic commands, maybe a little trot around the yard. Nothing fancy, just enough to make her feel special on her birthday. Everything was going great. The kids were eating cake, playing games. My daughter was in her riding gear, practically glowing. The trainer had Bella all ready to go. We were maybe 5 minutes away from starting the whole thing. That's when my cousin showed up. Karen and I have never really gotten along. She's one of those people who always has to be the center of attention, always has to one-up everyone else. If you went to Paris, she went to Paris twice and stayed in a better hotel. If you got a promotion, she got a bigger one at a more important company. You know the type. She walked into the backyard like she owned the place, even though she was a full hour late. Didn't apologize. Didn't even acknowledge my daughter. Just made a beeline for the horse. Karen got excited when she saw the horse and asked if we were having horses at the party. She said she didn't know about it. I explained that it was for my daughter's birthday demonstration and that my daughter had been practicing for weeks. Karen started bragging about how she'd been taking riding lessons herself and had just finished her 6th class the previous weekend. My aunt Karen's mother was right behind her, looking embarrassed. She suggested quietly that we should probably let them get started with the show since they were already late. But Karen wasn't listening. She was circling Bella, looking her over like she was inspecting a car she might buy. She asked about the horse's temperament and went on about how she'd been working with some pretty spirited horses at her stable. She called it real advanced stuff. The trainer was polite but firm. He told her that Bella was very gentle and perfect for children and beginners. He mentioned that we were actually about to start the demonstration and asked if she could step back. Karen brushed him off and said she knew how to handle horses. She claimed she was basically a veteran at this point. She added that her instructor said she was one of his best students. I tried to redirect her by saying that was great, but we really needed to start. I told her my daughter had been waiting all day for this. I looked over at my daughter. She was standing there in her riding helmet, holding the reins we'd gotten her as part of her birthday present. Her face had gone from excited to worried. She knew Karen. She'd seen her pull stuff like this before. The trainer helped my daughter up onto Bella. She sat there so proud, so ready. All the kids gathered around to watch. I had my phone out to record the whole thing. And then Karen did the most insane thing I've ever seen her do. She just walked right up behind Bella and jumped onto the horse's back, behind the saddle, behind my daughter. She literally leaped up and grabbed on, trying to swing her leg over. The trainer shouted something. My daughter screamed. I dropped my phone. Bella lost her mind. I don't know what exactly Karen did when she landed on that horse's back. Maybe she dug her heel in wrong. Maybe she grabbed Bella's mane too hard. Maybe it was just the shock of having someone jump on her like that. But Bella reared up, throwing my daughter clear. Thank God the trainer caught her. Then Bella started bucking like I've never seen a horse buck before. Karen was screaming, trying to hold on. But Bella wasn't having it. 3 huge bucks, and Karen went flying through the air like a rag doll. She sailed a good 10 feet and crashed right into our wooden fence. The whole section just exploded. Splinters everywhere. Karen lying in the wreckage. The kids were crying, parents were rushing over. The trainer was trying to calm Bella down while also making sure my daughter was okay. My aunt was screaming. I was already calling for an ambulance. The paramedics arrived within 10 minutes. Karen was conscious but groaning. They got her on a stretcher, checked her over. Nothing broken, but she'd have some spectacular bruises. They took her to the hospital for observation. After the ambulance left, I found the trainer. He looked devastated. He apologized over and over, saying he was so sorry. He said he should have been faster and should have stopped Karen before she got near the horse. I told him this wasn't his fault. I said he did everything right and that he kept my daughter safe. I said that was all that mattered. My daughter came over and hugged the trainer. She told him that Bella didn't mean to hurt anyone and that she was just scared. The trainer looked down at her and agreed, telling her she was so brave up there. We sent him home with full pay and a big tip. He'd done nothing wrong. Bella had done nothing wrong. This was all Karen. Later that night, my aunt called me from the hospital. She told me that Karen wanted to press charges against the trainer. She said Karen was claiming his horse was dangerous and had attacked her. I asked if she was serious. My aunt said she wasn't letting Karen do it. She said she saw what happened and that everyone saw what happened. She pointed out that Karen jumped on that horse without permission and could have gotten my daughter killed. I heard Karen yelling in the background about how this wasn't fair, how the trainer should have had the horse under control, how she was a victim here. My aunt's voice got sharp in a way I'd never heard before. She told Karen that she was not pressing charges and not suing anyone. She said Karen had embarrassed herself, ruined a little girl's birthday, and was lucky she wasn't facing charges herself for what she did. Then she told her to shut up and accept that she did this to herself. The line went quiet except for some muffled crying. We had to reschedule my daughter's writing demonstration for the next weekend. Smaller group, just family who we actually trusted. She did beautifully. The trainer brought Bella back, and my daughter gave that horse so many carrots and apples. We also had to replace 20 feet of fence. I sent Karen the bill. She never paid it, but I didn't really expect her to. At least she never brought up the lawsuit again. My father-in-law and I have always gotten along great. We share a lot of the same interests, hang out regularly, and he's genuinely one of my favorite people. That's important context for what I'm about to tell you, because even though I absolutely got revenge on him, we both thought it was hilarious in the end. This whole thing started back in December of 2021. My wife's family had invited us over for the holidays, and we ended up at their place in the middle of Philadelphia. The night was going pretty well. Everyone was in good spirits, and the drinks started flowing. I'm typically the designated driver for these events, since I'm the one who has to navigate us out of the city later, so I stuck to non-alcoholic stuff while everyone else got progressively more drunk. At some point in the evening, I was messing around with my wife and her sister. We gotten into this completely pointless argument about the best strategy for something in a video game we all played. Honestly, I wasn't even serious about my position. I was just purposely saying things to get under my wife's skin because that's what good husbands do, right? The kind of playful teasing that drives her crazy, but in a fun way. My father-in-law had been watching this whole exchange from across the room, clearly entertained by how worked up my wife was getting over my terrible takes. He came stumbling over, drunk as could be, laughing at how successfully I was pushing her buttons. He looked at my wife and told her he was going to show her exactly how to deal with a husband who was being annoying. And then he punched me directly in the crotch. Now, to be fair to him, he didn't wind up and give me everything he had. But any guy reading this knows that it doesn't matter. Even a light tap in that area is enough to make you want to curl up on the floor and question every life choice that led you to that moment. I doubled over immediately while everyone in the room either gasped or started laughing depending on how drunk they were. The rest of the night was a bit of a blur for me, though I did eventually recover enough to function like a normal human being. Later on, my father-in-law came up to me, clearly feeling bad about the whole thing. He was apologetic and even offered to let me punch him back to make it even. I told him no, that it was fine and that we were good. And we were good. But I also knew deep down that I was absolutely going to get him back for this. I just had no idea how yet. About a month passed, and then Pokemon Legends Arceus came out. This is relevant because my entire wife's family are huge Pokemon fans, including my father-in-law. We all bought the game on release day and started playing through it together. It became this shared experience where we talk about our teams, compare progress, and trade Pokemon back and forth. I'm pretty serious about Pokemon though. I've been hunting shiny Pokemon for years, which for those who don't know, means spending hours and hours trying to find extremely rare color variants of Pokemon. I had a whole collection of them that I'd accumulated over different games, and I transferred some of my favorites into Legends Arceus. My pride and joy was a shiny Giratina, this awesome black and gold legendary Pokemon that I'd spent forever hunting down in a previous game. Now, here's where it gets interesting. I beat Legends Arceus way faster than everyone else in the family because I had more free time to play. While I was messing around in the post-game, I discovered something completely by accident. I noticed that when my shiny Giratina used a specific move called Shadow Sneak, my entire Switch would freeze up and crash. Not just the game closing, but the whole system would become unresponsive and I'd have to hold down the power button to force it to shut down completely. At first I thought my Switch was broken, then I tested it a few more times and realized it was specifically tied to that shiny Giratina using that one move. I looked online to see if anyone else had reported this bug, but at the time I couldn't find anything about it. Far as I knew, I'd stumbled onto some weird glitch that nobody else had discovered yet. That's when the idea hit me. The perfect revenge. A few weeks later, we were all hanging out at my sister-in-law's house, playing Pokemon like we usually did. I casually mentioned to everyone that I had a bunch of extra shiny Pokemon sitting around from my years of hunting them. This wasn't entirely true since most of my shinies were ones I wanted to keep, but I said it anyway to make my offer seem less suspicious. Everyone got excited and started asking what I had available. I made a big show of scrolling through my boxes, showing off different options. My father-in-law's eyes lit up when he saw my shiny Giratina. I knew he would. Giratina is one of the coolest looking Pokemon normally, but the shiny version, with its black and gold color scheme, is even better. My father-in-law asked if there was any chance he could get that Giratina because it looked incredible to him. I pretended to think about it for a second before telling him, sure, I had another one in a different game anyway. This was a complete lie, but he didn't need to know that. We set up the trade and I sent the glitched shiny Giratina over to his game. Then I just sat back and waited. The thing about good revenge is that it requires patience. I didn't want to get him back immediately because that would be too obvious. So I just went about my normal life, hanging out with the family, playing games, not bringing it up at all. Eventually, I honestly kind of forgot that I'd even done it. Months went by. We had family gatherings, holiday celebrations, random weekend visits. Life continued as normal. Then one day when we were all together at another family event, my father-in-law started complaining about his Switch. He was clearly frustrated. He explained that he didn't know what was wrong with the thing because it kept crashing on him whenever he played Legends Arceus. He went on about how he'd tried everything he could think of. He'd uninstalled the game and reinstalled it. He'd checked for system updates. He'd even looked up troubleshooting guides online, but it just kept freezing up and forcing him to restart the whole console. He said it was driving him crazy. My wife and her sister were trying to help him figure it out, suggesting different things he could try. I sat there listening, trying not to smile because I suddenly remembered exactly what I'd done. I waited for a pause in the conversation before asking him if it happened specifically when he used Shadow Sneak with that shiny Giratina I gave him. The room went completely silent. My father-in-law stared at me. I told him that was for punching me in the crotch back in December. For a moment, nobody said anything. Then my father-in-law just started absolutely losing it, laughing so hard he could barely breathe. He kept saying how he'd wasted actual real time trying to fix that problem. Hours of troubleshooting. He deleted and re-downloaded the entire game. He told me he respected the long con and that it was incredible. A few days later, articles started appearing online about the glitch. Apparently, other people had finally discovered it, and gaming news sites were reporting on it as this weird bug in Legends Arceus. My father-in-law sent me screenshots of the articles with messages about how he'd been dealing with a known glitch for months and had no idea. Everyone in the family agreed it was one of the funniest examples of petty revenge they'd ever seen. My father-in-law still brings it up at family gatherings, always laughing about how he got played. And yeah, we're still cool. Maybe even closer than before, honestly. I should mention up front that my mom is disabled. She uses a wheelchair for everything, and getting her in and out of the car requires space and careful maneuvering. Our neighbor knows this. She's known it for years, but that hasn't stopped her from making our lives difficult at every opportunity. My dad works late most evenings, so I'm the one who usually deals with her nonsense. She rents out rooms in her house to different people, so there's a constant rotation of tenants. New faces every few months, different cars on the driveway. It's hard to keep track of who lives there and who's just visiting. The thing is, her driveway is massive. There's easily enough space for all her tenants to park their vehicles without any issues. We live in a rough area. Not terrible, but not great either. Car theft isn't uncommon, and I've heard stories from people a few streets over about break-ins and vandalism. That's why I installed a Ring doorbell, and why I always park directly in front of our house. The camera covers the street, and having my car right there means if anything happens, there's footage. It's just common sense when you're trying to protect your property. But my neighbor decided that parking in front of our house was somehow her right. She told me once that she likes to keep a few spaces open on her driveway so her tenants can have visitors over. She wants to give them the best experience possible, she said. Like, that's my problem. The first time she parked there, I knocked on her door politely. I explained the situation with my mom and told her about the security concerns. I asked if she could park on her own property where there was plenty of room. She nodded and apologized, saying she understood. 2 days later, she was parked in front of our house again. I asked her again. Same response. Same empty promises. It kept happening. Then one afternoon I was coming back from the shops and I saw her trying to park on her driveway. She pulled in at an angle, then had to reverse out. She tried again, got halfway in, stalled the engine. Tried once more, stalled again. It took her about 5 attempts to get the car into a space that was twice the width of her vehicle. That's when it clicked. She couldn't park properly. She was embarrassed about it and too stubborn to admit it. So instead of taking the extra 30 seconds to carefully maneuver into her own driveway, she just dumped her car in front of ours where it was easier. Last night I got home and there she was again, parked right in front of our house. I told her earlier this week that it needed to stop. I've been firm about it, but clearly she didn't care. So I made a decision. I parked my car in front of hers, but I left just enough space that technically she could get out if she was a competent driver. For someone with actual parking skills, it would have been tight but manageable. For her, no chance. This morning I woke up to the sound of an engine revving outside. I looked out the window and saw her reversing back and forth trying to get out of the gap. She'd pull forward a bit, then reverse, then pull forward again. The car was barely moving. After about 10 minutes of this, she gave up and came to my door. The knocking was loud and impatient. I opened it and she was standing there looking flustered. She told me she was running late for work and that I needed to move my car. I reminded her that I was parked on a public street, same as her. She insisted that I blocked her in and she couldn't get out. I told her there was plenty of space and she just needed to take her time with it. She said she didn't have time and needed to leave right away. She demanded I just move my car forward a bit. I could see she was getting agitated, but I wasn't about to reward her behavior by making things easy. I told her I'd asked her multiple times not to park there and that there was space on her driveway. She said her tenants needed that space. I pointed out that her tenants had cars on the driveway right now and there was room for hers too. She ignored that and just repeated that I should move the car. I told her I was in the middle of getting ready and was just about to get in the shower. She said it would only take me 2 seconds. I said I'd move it when I was done. She looked like she wanted to argue more, but I stepped back and closed the door. I wasn't about to shower. I'd already showered earlier, but she didn't need to know that. I went upstairs, turned the bathroom taps on, and waited. Every few minutes I'd peek out the window to see if she was still struggling. She was. The car would move forward an inch, then back an inch. She tried turning the wheel at different angles, but nothing worked. At one point she got out, looked at the gap, got back in, and tried again. 20 minutes passed. I turned off the taps, dried my hair a bit to make it look damp, and wrapped a towel around myself. Then I went back downstairs and cracked the door open just enough to poke my head out. She asked if I could finally move it now. I acted surprised and said I thought she'd have figured it out by now. She said she'd been trying for half an hour. I mentioned that it had only taken me about 10 seconds to park there last night. She went red in the face. She just repeated that I should move my car. I told her I was still wet from the shower and wasn't getting dressed, just to move my car because she couldn't park properly. I said to give me a few more minutes. I closed the door again. I could hear her swearing outside, but I didn't care. I made myself a cup of tea, checked my phone, and eventually looked out the window again. She'd managed to get out, somehow. There were skid marks on the road, and her car was at a weird angle, but she'd done it. She drove off without looking back. I moved my car back to where it normally sits, right in front of our house. That evening, she parked on her driveway. The next morning, too. For about a week, she stayed off our spot, but then she slipped up again, parked right in front of our house like nothing had happened. So I did the same thing. Parked her in, made it difficult. When she came knocking, I told her I was busy with an important work call and couldn't be interrupted. She was stuck there for 40 minutes. It's become a routine now. Every time she parks in front of our house, I make sure she regrets it. I'm not breaking any laws. I'm not doing anything wrong. I'm just parking on a public street, same as her. And now we have reached the end of today's stories. Thank you for watching, and see you next time.